You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Past Macabre, where we journey through history to uncover how our relationship with death reflects the values, fears, and hopes that shape the way people live. I'm your host, Stephanie Rice. Thanks for joining me for episode 26, Sunken Cities Part 4, The Lost City in Nevada. Now, I admit, this episode isn't about death, at least not the death of any people. More like the death of a city, its rediscovery, and how places are remembered. In this episode, we're heading to a sunken city in the desert of southern Nevada known as the Lost City or Pueblo Grande de Nevada. I visited the Lost City Museum on October 18th for International Archaeology Day, which you may have seen on social media, but I ran into technical issues and I couldn't do a live stream, so here's the makeup episode. I'll be joined by Virginia Lucas, curator and archaeologist at the Lost City Museum. But first, I wanted to provide a little context about the site, the Ancestral Puebloans, and their descendants. Ancestral Puebloans used to be widely known as Anasazi, but this is a Diné or Navajo word for ancestors of our enemies. Their Hopi descendants call them Hizatsunom, and their southern Paiute or Nuuvi descendants call them Ningwoots. Both of those roughly translate in their different languages to the ancient ones or the people who came before. The Ancestral Puebloans were part of the larger classification that archaeologists and historians use for the Southwest, known as the Basket Maker period. From about 7,000 BCE to about 750 CE, many different agrarian cultures across most of northeastern Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, and parts of southwestern Colorado, southern Utah, and southern Nevada were semi-nomadic, and they traveled between sites based on the season. So in order to travel, they prioritized lightweight basketry that could be used to carry everything that they needed instead of making very much pottery. Most pottery that's been found at sites from this period were trade goods based on the style and material analyses done on them. The Ancestral Puebloans during the Basket Maker period typically lived in pit houses which were dug into the ground to keep them cool in the hot desert. There were variations to different peoples who classify as basket makers, but this was specific to the Ancestral Puebloans. After about 750 CE, the culture groups of this entire region began switching to building pueblos above the ground and making more pottery. So archaeologists classified this period up until modern times as the Pueblo period. Pueblo means basically village in Spanish, so it's not like they referred to themselves as the Puebloans. The residents of the Lost City lived here during the Basket Maker period and into the Pueblo period, and that can actually be seen at the site with the different types of houses and artifacts that have been found in the area. Researchers have found evidence of Basket Maker peoples in the valley near the Lost City, or Moapa Valley as it's known now, dating back as far as 8,000 BCE. But until the Lost City was excavated by archaeologists, Western researchers didn't think that the Ancestral Puebloans specifically were part of the groups that lived as far west as southern Nevada. But now we know that they began building sedentary homes here around 200 CE, and they were a thriving center of trade and major agriculture exporter by 900 CE. Near the city, there are ancient salt mines that the residents used to preserve their food and that they used for trading. The Muddy River, which their pueblos are along, is a spring-fed river, so it remains year-round, which most of the rivers in the area are generally only active during the snowmelt seasons or during the monsoon rains, so they're not going to be available year-round for water. but the muddy river spring allowed the residents to improve their crop yield with irrigation channels from the river, and this even provided them enough water for them to grow cotton out in the desert, which we now know is one of the best environments to grow cotton if you can get the water to it, because cotton requires quite a lot of water to grow, but the wetlands that it tends to grow in can also lead to a lot of disease and mildew. But if you grow cotton in the desert, the arid air actually makes it grow pretty well. Both of the names this place is now known by, the Lost City or Pueblo Grande de Nevada, were intended to romanticize the site and conjure this image of a vanished culture and forgotten ruins. In the 1920s and early 1930s, the ruins were used to boost tourism in Nevada until the construction of the Boulder Dam, which is now known as the Hoover Dam, submerged the ruins. This is one of the rare examples of sunken cities where the city was abandoned long before it sank. The evidence points towards the city being abandoned around 1250 CE after a climate shift caused a long period of drought, like multiple years, which led to food scarcity and then economic instability because, as I said before, the core of their exports were based on agriculture. They still had the salt, but that's only going to get you so far in such a large trade network that they used to be very dependent on and a core centerpiece of. And a little ironically, today, climate change causing an extended drought over decades this time is the reason that the ruins are no longer submerged under Lake Mead. Lake Mead is supposed to be the largest reservoir of water in the United States. But in August, it was announced that the levels are currently at only 27% capacity and continuing to go down due to water demand and then historic droughts upstream along the Colorado River. All of that builds up, so by the time the water actually gets south to Lake Mead, there's not quite as much left because there's other dams further up the Colorado River as well. Even when standing at the Lost City Museum, in the town that it's in, Overton, there used to be a beach there. But now, the Lost City Museum itself is near some of the ruins, but they were further away. The core of the site, so to speak, where one of the largest pueblos is, that's over 100 rooms, that used to be completely underwater. And now you can see there's no more beach. There's basically only wetlands from the Muddy River Spring coming through, and Lake Mead itself is miles down now. It's no longer in the area. I stayed at a place called North Shore Inn, but it's no longer on any North Shore. Now, the Lost City, as we call it now, was abandoned, but the area wasn't. The Moapa Band of Paiute Indians specifically were one of the descendant communities of those who lived at the Lost City, and they still live nearby. To them, it was never lost. It was an honored place for their ancestors, and I don't know if they actually specifically have a name for it as a quote-unquote city. That is ascribing a more modern Western name to this large group of pueblos that were closely networked and essentially what we would consider a city. Now, let's get further into the history of the Lost City and the museum dedicated to it with the curator and archaeologist for the site, Virginia Lucas. Okay, so welcome to today's episode about the Lost City Museum. And so with me, I have Virginia, who is the archaeologist on site of the museum. So if you could please tell me about yourself and what you do there with the museum.
So I'm Virginia Lucas, and I'm the curator and archaeologist here at Lost City. I've been here roughly 8 years, and we work with interpreting and explaining the artifacts from the Ancestral Puebloan who lived here in the Moapa Valley in Overton, Nevada around 1,000 years ago.
That is so cool. I love the museum and the whole area. I study baskets, so obviously the whole region is like really my bread and butter. I'm an Egyptologist, but obviously can't go to Egypt all the time. So I've done archaeology here in California, and I fell in love with your museum because I accidentally found it on a road trip one time.
That's usually the way people find us, is through road trips and seeing the sign on the interstate.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to share it, because when I've like talked to other people about it, they're like, wait, that exists. So I just like, yes, like everybody should go. It's so much fun because you have the archaeology site right there next to you. And I also love that it's a museum about archaeology.
We're pretty unique like that here in Nevada, at least. And then we're being one of the 7 state museums. And we're the second oldest of the state museums. This is our 90th anniversary this year.
Oh, that's so cool. Congrats.
So yeah, we've been around for a while.
That is awesome. Yeah. So from what I read, it started because of the construction of the Boulder Dam, correct?
Yeah, well, it actually started because of that. It actually had started previously from excavations in the 1920s. So starting in 1924 to 26, and you being an Egyptologist, it actually came about because of the exciting finds that were going on in Egypt. A couple of years prior, in 1922, the governor of Nevada at the time, Governor James Scroggum, had sent out a call with, hey, is there any interesting archaeological sites in southern Nevada? Because they're also trying to build tourism, because Las Vegas in the 1920s, not the Las Vegas of today. And so a couple of local brothers, John and Faye Perkins, had reached out, hey, we have ruins here in Overton in Moapa Valley. So, if you can have somebody come and take a look. And so Governor Scroggum sent Mark Harrington down here, who is an archaeologist. And Mark Harrington was pretty ahead of his time, and also always wanted a native person on his crew because this was their land. So he worked with a Pitt River native by the name of Willis Evans. And they came down here in 1924. And the story goes, they're walking along and Mark Harrington is finding pottery sherds, and John and Faye are both like, oh, don't worry about that. We'll show you more impressive things. And he did. And at that point in time, the Ancestral Puebloan had not been known to be this far west, or Anasazi as, a lot of people know them as. Mark Harrington actually took these pottery sherds to New Mexico to an archaeologist for him to take a look. And he was told, oh, there's no Anasazi that far west. Threw the sherds in the trash. And Mark Harrington was like, I beg to differ, grabbed them and, came on back up. And then because of those early excavations, when 1930s roll around with the building of Boulder Dam, Hoover Dam, they started more excavations. So they actually pulled a couple of crews off the dam to do excavations, and then they needed a place for those artifacts, and that's how the museum came about.
That's awesome. While salvage archaeology can be like super stressful, I appreciate when it does happen.
Yes.
Especially like this started because I started doing a series on sunken cities, and so I was like, the Lost Museum would be perfect to show. There's an example of it here in North America. Yeah. So when it comes to like the actual footprint of the site, how much of it is under Lake Mead, or what used to be Lake Mead before the drought?
Yes, all of it is out of the water now, and has been for, I would say, probably since about 2007, 2008, because I know, and it might have even been a little before that, because I know Overton Beach, which was a very big swimming area, was still in use roughly around like 2005 and 6. And the sites are actually north of that. But it's a twofold thing. So it's where the Virgin River and the Muddy River meet. And so part of it was down kind of below the ridge, and then a lot of it was up on the ridge. So it wasn't just one site that was named the Lost City or Pueblo Grande de Nevada. There were several pueblos through there. But all of them, there were a few that did go underwater, but I don't know how long they stayed underwater.
Yeah, unfortunately, the drought has been just like ticking away at Lake Mead very quickly. And now when I was just there, it was amazing because I had been there last in 2018, and there was still like enough water that there was a lot of wetlands in that area. And now going back, the wetlands have shrunk quite a lot.
Because even in 2018, Echo Bay, which was the furthest north along North Shore Road in Lake Mead that still had a boat ramp, that's completely, because they kept extending it. And I think it was like 2021, 22, they decided that it was no longer cost effective to keep extending those, however they did that, those rails to go on out there. So it's still operational with other things, but there's no boat ramp anymore. So that's one less lake access.
It's just weird seeing that change happen so quickly in our lifetimes, but not to keep going down the climate change rabbit hole, which we could definitely go on about. So when it comes to the entire site, all of the pueblos, is there any more archaeology going on now because they're no longer underwater?
So over there, not really. I know that the Lake Mead archaeologists do monitor them along with the State Historic Preservation Office, but they're not doing any excavations. The last excavations done at Lost City were, I think it was like 2013, 14 maybe. I might be a little off. Because one of the professors at UNLV, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, had done excavations out there, and that was the last formal excavation done. There's been stuff done throughout the rest of the valley, and they were doing some stuff at Valley of Fire State Park, but not at the actual Lost City site.
Okay. So when it comes to like the larger Valley of Fire State Park, I love the petroglyphs there. There's a lot of the like bighorn sheep, and honestly, I love just stopping for any petroglyphs I can find. But when it comes to specifically these, do they have a connection to the Lost City? Is it basically the same people?
I'm honestly going to be truthful. I don't know. I think so. There's been talk, because I don't do petroglyphs. That's not my specialty. I'm a zooarchaeologist, so I study animal bones from archaeological sites. And so I know that there is some Paiute petroglyphs, and I know that some have been that do predate and probably are connected with these folks here with the Atlatl rock. You know, you have the Atlatl. I think there's been some talk that maybe even some Fremont influence, which, Fremont is up more in Utah. But yes, they would be connected. As far as to how connected, not entirely sure.
Got it. Yeah, that's fair. Petroglyphs are so hard to study because it's there on the rocks, but they don't really leave any datable trace unless you manage to find something nearby. And even then, it's kind of guesswork if it's going to be exactly the same. So when it comes to the museum, there's the pit house that's on site and then the rebuilt pueblos. So could you expand more on those?
So we have an actual pueblo too, the one inside. So the pit house is an actual site. It was first excavated in the 30s before the Civilian Conservation Corps built it up to what a pit house would look like. And we constantly monitor that. They used to actually let people down inside there, liability issues, we kind of don't do that. Because that ladder, I've not been in there, but my boss has, and it's frankly terrifying.
Yeah, I took a video of it. Yeah, that's fair. I honestly don't either. I'm scared of heights, so I already suck at dealing with ladders. And I took a video there and literally said, "Look at this terrifying ladder." So,
yeah, it's big inside though. It's like 15 feet, I think, across. Because we go in and monitor just to make sure nothing is collapsing in, because you've got the cars that go around it. But yeah, it's a pit house site that dates to, it was around 600 or so, 500, 600 AD. So a while ago, 1,500 years ago. And then the pueblos in the back are replicas that were also built by the Civilian Conservation Corps. And they were built also in 1935. And we constantly, or once a year, they get remudded because, rain and mud don't really mix it.
Yeah.
They fall apart, they crack. So we have every March, April, May, we have a couple of guys that we hire out, and our grounds person that knock off the cracked mud or the cracked dirt, and then they do a mixture of sand and mud. And we're thinking of trying something new that we had learned about with it, mixing agave in with it. So it's supposed to help it stick, and mixing that to remud, and then they'll be ready for the next year.
That is very cool. I have a bunch of pictures of my oldest, like just kind of like crouching in the doorways. I love it.
It was actually, we did have them closed for a bit because we had some cracking. We had a person come out from Colorado. They had done some monitoring on the beams, and we actually had to replace one of the beams in there, or at least give it some more support because it was starting to crack, because those are the original ones from 35.
Yeah, I was about to say from 1930s. So yeah, it's, I mean, considering it's wood and the amount of moisture that does actually happen that most people don't realize in the, like, that area, that like Four Corners area, there, the like almost monsoon like rains basically.
Yes. And we just had some in September, and we actually usually have to close, not because of anything at the museum itself, but our wash down below floods. And
because the museum's kind of like up. Yeah,
we're up on the hillside.
I love that you can like look down and see like the valley around it, though. Honestly, I love like trying to imagine like what it would have been like here before.
But the actual Pueblo we have, you know, you can envision that, like, it's a setup on the hillside so they can see, you know, anybody coming up and things like that, because of that Pueblo, that was where it was built.
Yeah. And with the one that's inside, it's kind of like halted in the different stages of the archaeological process. So it talks about the Pueblo, but also the archaeology of it. Right.
Because the two of the units are exposed, and you can actually see that kind of plastered floor. They recovered two of it so you can kind of see what it would look like in the desert if you're out walking. And then the other ones are, you know, to show what it would have looked like, 900 years ago or so. And that one was actually excavated twice as well. So once in the 30s before the museum was built, and then once before they built that wing around it. So that wing was built in 1981. So they would have excavated probably 1979, 1980, just to make sure that there was, you know, nothing, and then to prepare it for what it was going to look like once it was covered.
Yeah. That is so cool. And I saw too, you spoke of Mr. Evans, and I saw that there's a lot of stuff from his family that's actually part of the museum too. So you have a lot of the like actual indigenous crafts there. And like, how much do y'all work with the other descendant communities?
So we're actually working on that. We have a good relationship with the Moapa Band of Paiute. And one of the things we're going to be doing here in the very near future, within the next year or so, is, if you remember when you were here, we had the Tule Springs exhibit in the back with the fossils.
Yes.
So that whole wall is going to become a kind of a contemporary art. So like a contemporary native exhibit. So looking at the Moapa Paiute as well as the Hopi, and then also having it as an art space for native artists. So we're hoping to pull items in from the Moapa Paiute. But right now, we don't have a whole lot, because that's a thing we're trying to build towards. Like I said, we have a good working relationship with them, but we don't really have a lot of artifacts other than the baskets, which you saw. And we have a lot more in the back, but it's hard to display everything that we have. Yeah. But we are working towards doing a lot more with that.
That is cool. Yeah. Because I love how many more museums just in general are starting to work more with like those descendant communities and like the local indigenous, even if like there's still lots of debate about like who counts as an ancestor, but honestly, they're there. So consult them.
And then with the Willis Evans family, that one was such a great exhibit because his grandson, Shannon Evans, is the one who reached out. And so that cradle board that's in there, it was getting kind of damaged, just, you know, because it's over 100 years old. It was built or made in 1896 when Willis was born. Mm-hmm. And it's on a long-term loan, so it's not ours. But he wanted an exhibit, but it's really hard to make an exhibit around just one single artifact. So what we did, he had other things, so like the baskets and those beaded moccasins. And we pulled items that we knew from digs that Willis had taken part in, because he was a pretty prolific archaeologist. After working with Harrington, was a foreman with the Civilian Conservation Corps, and then did excavations in his own right. And so it became a thing of his legacy with, you know, his excavations plus his family. And UNLV's library history department did an oral history project. So we had his wife's voice that I was able to get information. And then we had most of the family here for the opening of the exhibit in March of 22. So
that is very
that
cool.
was awesome. There were a lot of tears involved.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So. Yeah. Because, I mean, I can only imagine with that kind of like connection, like it's such a direct and obvious connection to one of your ancestors, but then much older ancestors as well. So that's amazing. So thank you so much. I definitely wanted to ask about the baskets, but I also want to be like respectful of your time. So I guess just quickly, when it comes to the basketry that is there, how much is made by more modern artists and how much is actually from excavations?
So most everything we have is from the 1930s. So historic basket. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, because that time period, you know, like 1920s to around 1940 was a big time with native arts, right? Because you had the pottery, everybody was wanting pottery, and everybody was wanting
and the
baskets.
Blankets.
Yeah, and the blankets. So that's where most of this came from, and this belonged to the Perkins family, so John Fay Perkins and his wife. And so those were donated then, but we do have a couple of examples of modern baskets. You might have seen it back in the Pueblo Grande de Nevada exhibit from like, you know, 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago, in those 1920s excavations that Mark Harrington did. So, and, you know, because of the climate out here, it preserves. We've got notes from Harrington's original 1924 to 26 excavations talking about, you know, feather blankets and fur blankets. There was even a remark about a purple, like that had some purple fibers to it. So obviously that would have been dyed somehow. All of that preserved. And most of that material is actually in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. We ended up with what we have here completely by accident because it was up at the Nevada Historical Society, because that is the oldest museum in the state system. And they came across boxes back in 2017 with Lost City. And instead of it dawning that it should go to Lake Mead because it's federal, they called us, and this was before I got here, and our curator at the time went up to get them, and then they found more items. So I went in 2019, and then it all hit us like, oh, this probably shouldn't have come here. So it's on long-term loan from Lake Mead now, and also we created the exhibit because we're the Lost City Museum and had no artifacts from the Lost City on display. So you kind of had to fix that. So.
Yeah, that is actually an interesting thing that I didn't actually consider with the Lake Mead National Recreation Area, but then you have the Valley of Fire State Park, who gets the artifacts, but then you also have the descendant communities.
Yeah, so for anything on Lake Mead, it is fed, and most of those, they don't have a huge storage area, so a lot of that material actually goes to Tucson. State Park is state system, so they have it in with their excavations in their storage. Actually, most of what we have is from the rest of the Moapa Valley, but do have a few things that are also federal that we've got agreements for and everything that were done years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that is very cool. I didn't even realize that there was some of that in the Smithsonian. Do you know if any of the Lost City artifacts have been recently on display?
I don't think they've been on display at all, because I've only actually been there a couple of times for that particular, was it the National Museum of the American Indian, I think is and most of what they have is actually more modern representation. Yeah. There's like a little bit that's pre-Columbian.
I've only been once and it's been a long time. I think the only pre-Columbian thing that I actually remember was fragments of one of the canoes that was found in the Southeast. But otherwise, I don't remember anything else that was actually like pre-Columbian.
I've seen some like the shell trumpets and some shell artifacts.
Oh, yeah.
But that's about it. Most everything, you know, it's in their storage. Documented. Yeah. And the only reason we knew about it is back in 2007, 2008, that professor from UNLV, Karen Hari, had a grant to document all the Lost City materials. So she and some of her students went to the Smithsonian, went to Tucson, down to their facility, went over to the Southwest Museum, which is part of the Autry Museum now, came here with Flagstaff, like all over the place, and, documented photos and the artifacts. So we have the photos of the actual artifacts and then historic photos too from the excavations as well.
Yeah, so those are cool. And then I saw also the like historic photos and then also the actual like survey sheets and all of the like official documents from like the carbon dating. It's so cool to see them. I didn't even realize that we had some of the Lost City artifacts here at the Autry too.
Yeah.
It's not too far from me.
And no, because of the closing, because the Southwest Museum, obviously it was taken in by the Autry, but now I don't think that's even housed, because from what I understand, they're actually trying to get most of those artifacts back to Nevada because like nobody's answering emails, phone calls, anything. So it'd be nice to bring things back home.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That it's, like I said, it's weird that it's here in LA. We've got enough of our own indigenous tribes to educate people about, so. Yeah,
well, part of that, Mark Harrington was affiliated with Southwest Museum. So that's how that came about. Because I think with his contracts and everything, part of it went to the Southwest Museum, part went to the High Foundation in New York and the Smithsonian, and then part came to the state of Nevada itself. So,
yeah, I don't think people realize like how complex, like where exactly the artifacts go and how all of the funding comes from so many different places based on that. So thank you for bringing that up, because I do want to give people more of a glimpse of the like behind the scenes of museums, because obviously you do a great job of showing everybody the front face, but people don't realize how much work goes into that.
Well, like the Tule Springs exhibit, so it's from the Tule Springs National Monument, and because they don't have a facility or anything over there, I was actually part of the group that brought a large number of those artifacts or those fossils back to Las Vegas, and they were being stored in San Bernardino from an excavation back in the early 2000s. But there's stuff at the big Natural History Museum in New York has Thule's material. I think the Smithsonian does, because it was part of the 1950s, 60s big dig time period.
Oh, yeah.
They even found stuff when they were trying to reconcile a lot of the artifacts and the fossils, stuff in Canada as well.
Oh, so wow.
Yeah, because it got loaned out from New York up there. And I think there was stuff in Michigan, items in Michigan as well.
Wow.
So yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah, it's so weird to think about. Like, I'm sure people assume, I used to at least, that you do an excavation, whether it's paleontology or archaeology, and everything should stay together. But obviously it does not.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Honestly,
it'd make life and research so much easier.
Yeah. I was doing a paper on like the little flint creatures that come from pre-dynastic Egypt. And I had to go to LACMA, and then I had to go to UCLA's collections, and then I had to like try to reach out to the Smithsonian. So I get it. Like they're everywhere.
Wow.
So, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to let people know about?
Not that I can think of, because we covered most of the museum, and, I can't say much more other than we're pretty awesome.
I agree.
Our artifacts are really great. We do a great job with the housing and rehousing and preservation. And we actually do put on I'm going to go in and just put this out there, a Native American Heritage Day once a year. This coming year, it'll be in the last Saturday of February. And we work with Native groups. So we have the Native dancers and vendors too, for jewelry, food, everything. And we actually shut our store down, at least of the jewelry part, because we sell jewelry, as you probably saw, to encourage people to shop with the vendors, because we don't want to compete with them. And then they keep all parts of their proceeds for that.
That's great.
So we don't charge a fee, even a setup, a table fee or anything. And that'll be last Saturday of February. Well worth the trip. It's pretty awesome.
I'm going to try very hard to go. I'm going to put it on my calendar.
Yes.
I really suck at overcommitting in advance. So just forewarning that I might be committing the same weekend I already have a commitment, but because that sounds amazing.
And follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we always put our stuff up, put our events up there.
Cool. I will be sure to tag you when I make the social media post for this then. So I'm going to do a video of the actual museum, because when I was there, I ended up not being able to live stream at all because I did not factor in the signal.
Yeah, internet and stuff. And, cell phone signals are terrible.
Yeah, I'm so used to like being able to just use my phone as the hotspot. And so since I had to plug in my laptop, I was like, well, I can't tour the museum. So
outside it's better, I will say,
it
because
is,
because a lot of what we have found is because of the original building, because, we do have 2 additions on the building, but the original is the adobe, and those walls are around 18 to 20 inches thick. And,
wow.
Yeah, so adobe blocks a lot of that signal. But
that is good to know.
2 years ago, I think it was, back in what used to be the residential part of it, because we did have a caretaker who lived on premises. It's now offices and everything. The air conditioning went out, and it was July or August. So, hot. And with the ceiling fans we had, it only got to roughly around 83, 84 in there. So not bad. I mean, but it's because of the adobe, because it insulates.
It is very good. Yeah. Especially considering I'm sure it was like triple digits by then.
Oh, yes, very much so. I think it was in the 1 teens.
Oh,
because it gets hotter here in Overton than it does in Las Vegas, because we're sitting at just a little bit lower elevation than Vegas is.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense geographically. I'm originally from Texas, and I don't miss the heat. So I definitely feel for you when it comes to summertime. But
I'm from Tennessee originally, so I don't miss the humidity that much, though.
I was about to ask, so at least you don't have the humidity. Is the dry heat better?
True. But it was funny because I moved out here in 2015 in August to start school, and we were shopping, and there was a pop-up thunderstorm, and these 2 women came in complaining about the humidity. It was 40% was what my aunt and I checked, and we're laughing because that's nothing. 2 months later, I'm walking around on campus, and I'm like, oh, it's so humid. I look, it was 30%. So I'm like, okay, guess I'm acclimated to the desert now.
Yep. Yeah. It's now you belong here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. After we moved to Southern California, I was like, oh, I can handle the heat waves. Our heat waves are 90 at most. And now they actually get to me. I know. It's so sad. It's I used to handle triple digits just fine with at least 50% humidity. Definitely not as bad as Tennessee.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Virginia. This has been amazing. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also wanted to make sure to plug again, the museum is amazing. It's in Overton, Nevada, which is about an hour from Las Vegas. Definitely worth it. There's tons of smaller owned motels and hotels that are actually in Overton for everybody who's I don't want to do that drive. So you can actually easily stay in Overton, and the little hotel that I was at was very cute. So I was at North Shore Inn, and that was always funny because it's there's no water near me, but there used to be.
Well, you're kind of on near the Muddy River too. So the Muddy River is one that keeps water, which is why most of the archaeological sites through Moapa Valley are along the Muddy River. There's roughly 300 plus sites along the river there. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. I did not realize there were that many just in that concentrated area, but
they
makes
grew
sense.
Crops and thrived by the muddy. There's not as many along the Virgin River because that's one that dries up. It's reliant on rainfall and snowmelt. Muddy River is an underground spring fed. So it has water even in drought.
And I read that actually because of it, they were actually able to grow cotton in the desert. Yep. So that is very cool.
And then when the LDS Mormon settlers came back in the 1800s, pomegranate was huge. I mean, we have a pomegranate festival in November.
Oh, cool.
Or I guess it's technically Logandale, but you passed by as you drove through probably so many pomegranate trees because of getting
That
ready,
makes
and
sense.
they'll have fruits and stuff.
I saw a bunch and I was not quite sure exactly what they were. I was like, they're kind of short for any other like citrus that I would recognize. So that is cool.
Pomegranate.
Yeah, I love pomegranate. Maybe I'll have to also come visit in November. I'll just be there every month.
Second weekend in November, and it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Awesome. Cool. There's so many like fun things to do around there. And so I definitely recommend anybody to go visit it if you can. Obviously, it's hard to get to Vegas if you're in, Europe, but I definitely recommend it any chance you get. So make a day trip out of the whole area if you ever have a chance to go. Again, thank you so much, Virginia, and have a wonderful day. Virginia Lucas and her team at the Museum for the Lost City are preserving the connections between the past and present by showcasing the ancient lives of the ancestral Puebloans, the current lives of their descendants, and the historical archaeology done in the Moapa Valley. But as Virginia mentioned, there was a lot of misinformation surrounding the site when the news of its discovery first broke nationally in the 1920s. Unfortunately, a lot of that sensationalized misinformation became the foundations for quite a lot of pseudoarchaeology conspiracies that we see today. For anyone curious about the rumors of giants in the American Southwest, or ancient aliens, or any other strange claims you may see associated with the word Anasazi, I recommend visiting the Lost City Museum or any of the similar regional museums and cultural centers throughout the Colorado River Basin that are run with or by the descendants of the ancestral Puebloans. And then you can learn the truth about their history instead of the sensationalized claims from a century ago. And I also recommend that anyone who takes a trip to Southern Nevada, even if you're just there for Las Vegas, take a little day trip outside of Las Vegas, stop by the Lost City Museum, and walk through the petroglyph trails that are at the Valley of Fire State Park, which is next to the museum. It's amazing to immerse yourself in the landscape and the ancient history of the area. Obviously, the huge museums have tons to see, but my favorite thing about the regional museums, you can get a lot more very specific insight about an area and get the information that's been passed down from the people who actually lived that history. And that's not really something you can get at one of the large private or state or national museums. And the Native American Heritage Day at the Lost City Museum that Virginia had mentioned in the interview is going to be February 28th. So if you happen to be near Las Vegas or close enough to take the trip, please check it out and support the Indigenous artists. There will be a YouTube video coming soon after this to show off the museum as was intended by the live stream, and some of the historical photos that Virginia had mentioned will be included in it. I'm just being a bit of a perfectionist, and so it's taking me a while to edit the clips. But it will be coming soon, and I'll post it on social media when it's out. Thanks again for joining me for Sunken Cities Part 4, The Lost City in Nevada. The next episode will be leaving Sunken Cities, and it's going to be dedicated to the newly and finally opened Grand Egyptian Museum. They have a ton of amazing recreations of funerary spaces and the entire assemblages from certain tombs, such as every single artifact from King Tut's tomb is going to be together for the first time since they were excavated. 5,000 plus artifacts. There's also going to be the solar barges of Khufu on display, and they've recreated the burial pits that they were found in near the Great Pyramid. So that's also going to be amazing to see. There'll be so much more that I'll go into in the next episode, so please join me. So thanks again for joining me for this episode. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to keep up with new releases. Please leave a rating and a comment. That helps the show reach others who may be interested in the past macabre. For access to bonus content from all Archaeology Podcast Network shows, become a member at archpodnet.com/members. That's archpodnet.com/members. You can find show notes for this and other episodes at archpodnet.com/TPM. and follow Past Macabre on Instagram. That's PAST_MACABRE. You'll find pictures of the sites and artifacts discussed, Q&A sessions, and episode topic votes. Hope to see you there.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Cultural Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.